Hey, I'm Björn from Highfinder. You're watching the Hydrogen Leader podcast. Today we are talking with Bart Biedberg. He has a lot to share. He's a known figure in the industry, did multi-billion projects, and he's sharing what it takes to run a successful hydrogen project.
It is super important to get the people on board.
How he became successful as a leader.
Keep believing in what you're doing and do not get distracted.
And what is he doing in the industry going forward the next 10 years?
My aim is that we achieve the hydrogen economy.
Watch until the very end because you will be surprised what he has to share and recommend for all people who are driven to work in the hydrogen economy. Thank you for watching. Welcome, Bart Biedberg, to the podcast, The Hydrogen Leader.
Thanks for having me, Björn.
As you know, with this format, we want to inspire professionals to become hydrogen leaders just like you. And we not only talk about the hydrogen economy, but also about leadership principles and your personal growth hacks. And I want to start off with a question: who is Bart Biedberg?
Well, Bart Biedberg has basically worked all his professional career on hydrogen. When I graduated in my high school from the Netherlands, because I studied actually in the Netherlands on automotive engineering. Actually, I'm a car guy. That's also logically because my first job after I left university, I went to Toyota and the research. And basically that's where I learned about hydrogen the first time, and I was very much interested about hydrogen. And Toyota was actually one of the pioneers on this technology. And so very quickly, as a very junior engineer, when I started in Toyota, I said, I want to work on hydrogen. And so that's actually how it started.
But you went there with the ambition to start working on hydrogen. What was the ticking moment that you say, I need to get into this industry?
Well, no, it was actually, during the studies, we heard about hydrogen, but there it did not really yet, sounded really, it didn't yet touched me. But when I learned more about it, when I joined Toyota and when I heard about the projects that they had on hydrogen, I said, oh, but wait a minute, this is it, And then you start digging and learning a little bit more of it. And they say, yeah, well, that's the solution, actually.
Okay.
Because I joined the powertrain department, a division at that time. And of course, it's all about at that time with diesels and gasoline, and hybrid was just coming out. Actually, that was the year when we started the Prius, the first Prius, 1999.
Is that the one I'm seeing behind you?
Yeah, that's the Mirai. That's
the Mirai.
That's the Mirai, but the Prius was the first hybrid car, from Toyota, where everybody said, hybrid, this will not work, this is too expensive and so on. Well, I think today we learned that hybrid, everybody has now hybrids, and it's one of the most popular technologies now to be driven with. So that was that was the start. So I said, yeah, I want to do that because, in this kind of programs, people said, okay, what do you want to do in the future? That was at Toyota, not different. So I said, yeah, I want to work one day in the hydrogen sector. That's how it went. And then, when I moved to Japan, I worked in Japan for a couple of years. I moved there with my family. When I came back, I said, we need to establish here also a hybrid hydrogen center or something with hydrogen, because we need to start working on it. And that's how really I started really become very active on hydrogen, because we had the first prototypes here. We had the program in Germany where we put it a couple of these fuel cell advanced vehicles. That was a kind of a 4x4 type of thing, carrying as a kind of Jeep type of design. And so, or SUV, that would be correct. And so then, from there, I can tell you further. We designed the Mirai and so on and so on. But then, in 2016, basically, when when we launched the first Mirai on Europe, when we also, opened the first hydrogen refueling station in Belgium. Actually, these are my two babies in the back.
That's your baby.
Yeah. I worked 7 years on the Mirai one, and then also I built the first hydrogen refueling station in Belgium more than 10 years ago.
Right.
Big story, how to get that first hydrogen refueling station. I mean, I will never forget my first meeting with authorities to say I want a hydrogen refueling station, and they were looking to me like, "Who is this guy?" You know, but was a very interesting conversation. I can tell you more about that. But then when we launched it, then there was an opportunity to start at the European Commission because they were looking for a new head in the Commission to lead the European Hydrogen and Fuel Cell Program. And so, yeah, I mean, since I had quite a lot of knowledge on hydrogen, but also, I mean, this was a bit of a side now, but I was also locally in my city. I was politically active, where basically
in Belgium then.
In Belgium, yeah, but in a very small city. I mean,
Yeah.
only 20,000 inhabitants, so it's an extremely small city. But I was really active there, and I mean, I was part of the local government. And so they said, "Oh, that's quite interesting. I mean, we have actually somebody who understands politicians, but also who understand the technology." And they said, "Okay, finding somebody who has like these two kind of backgrounds is very unique because normally an engineer doesn't easily go to politics, and so and vice versa. I mean, these are quite unique animals, I would say, these two together. So that's why they found it very interesting, and that's why after running through the official process, which took a year, then I was actually assigned to head the fuel cell and hydrogen undertaking, and then. Yeah, and after that was for a 7 years mandate, by the way. It is a fixed term by the commission because once you're at that level, I mean, this is the highest level you can get. They said, okay, you can do this only for 7 years because otherwise it becomes sensitive. You know, you might take some advantage of some companies or whatever. You say you might become kind of sensitive to things, and that's why they limit these kind of positions for maximum 7 years. And then I had a choice. I mean, after 7 years of being at the helmet of the European Union for hydrogen fuel cells, so what do? You move to another area like digital or health or bio, or you can do many things at the commission, you know. But my heart was hydrogen, so I said, no, I have to stay in the hydrogen field. And then that's where I started Green Energy Park together with a number of companies, and that's where we are now really working to make the hydrogen economy a reality because this is what we want to achieve.
Please do me a favor and subscribe to our channel. If you like the content, it helps a lot to grow the channel. Thank you very much. Okay, I think you touched upon many things already. Just keeping a little bit on this personal story. What drives you? Because I now know that you are passionate for hydrogen. But is there anything that you as a professional say, I'm a very driven person because?
No, because I believe very strongly that we need to work on the climate ambitions that we have. I mean, everything started when I was very young. I had a very serious accident when I was young. I was in an explosion. I mean, some people might know that, and I was actually close to death. I mean, I was a couple of weeks in hospital where nobody knew whether I would make it. So, and then I will never forget when I woke up. I mean, after a month, and then I could start. I mean, standing up again, and I watched basically outside of my window, and there I saw a beautiful tree. I will never forget. It was like a solitary tree, and that's where I kind of said, okay, I want to work on the rest of my life to do something good for the climate because now I received a second chance in my life. Because otherwise, it was very close to that. My life was over, and so and that was a very important moment that I said I will dedicate this second chance to do something right for the climate. And hydrogen came late. I mean, hydrogen then came during my engineering courses, and then then the rest is history.
So, Bart, thank you for sharing this. I guess it says a lot if people who have a near-death experience then wake up and say, I need to do something for climate, and I will dedicate my professional life to do this. I think this is quite extraordinary and inspiring. So, coming back to your different roles, why are you such an advocate for hydrogen? Is this really, as you say, this is it? This is the solution? Why do you believe this is the solution?
Because it's very circular. For me, it is clearly the solution. It's circular. You do not harm basically the earth and the climate, because you start from water and you return to water. So is more circular you cannot be, and water is very abundant on this, let's say, on this planet. Even hydrogen is a molecule which is the most available on this planet, and actually hydrogen is the origin of everything. I mean, stars, planet, even humans are built by molecules of hydrogen. So I think it's the most logical thing that if this works with that molecule also to clean up our let's say industrialization, and then
It's the first molecule as well. We know
it's
this.
number one in the
It's number one.
It's number one in the table of Mendeleev. So in the table of Mendeleev. So I mean, it's a logical thing to do. And yes, there are many challenges to get there. I agree that, but I mean, in my opinion, it's the solution for sure.
Okay, so reflecting on the three different roles that you had as an engineer in Toyota, as a very important person in the European administration, and now in Green Energy Park, is there a consistent learning that you as a leader can share with our audience? Because you are a very successful businessman. What is the origin of your personal success?
Keep believing in what you're doing, and do not get distracted. I think keep the focus. And for me, it was always like, make step forwards. Make a step every day. Every day you wake up, make a step forward, and don't try to reach the ideal situation, the perfect situation, because if you always try to achieve that, you will never get there. So always make steps forward, but believe in your goal. I mean, there are many ways to reach your goal. I mean, I always say when I explain to young engineers or something, look, we have a goal, and on your path to your goal, there will be many roadblocks, But there are many ways to go around the road. You can go around, you go under it, you can go through it, you can go over it. So there are many ways to pass your roadblock. The most important is always to stay focused on your end goal. This is what you want to achieve, and that's where you need to go. And don't get, don't get negative. I mean, always stay positive in life. It gives you so much energy, and it's also so nice when you talk to people and you stay always positive and so on. It doesn't mean that you should be naive. That's something else. But staying positive, and yes, there are things that sometimes doesn't work out, and sometimes also say, I should have done that differently. This is not good. This is bad. But it is all on a pathway towards your end goal. And if you keep your focus on that end goal, the things that happen today, tomorrow, or next week, which are maybe not positive or having a negative, doesn't matter so much. You just learn from it, you take it on, and you move to the next step. This is the most important.
I can totally buy into that. And what I think professionals tend to not see is the learning that they will get on the way. Because many people want to craft out their future like an Excel sheet, but they always see risk, but nobody sees all the opportunities that will come along the way and the support that you will get. And I think this is one of the main learnings I have received when I started my journey as Highfinder.
Yeah, it's very important, Bjorn, is that you keep your eyes open.
Yeah.
Because I agree, you have setbacks, you have successes, and you need to learn. And this is, the longer you go in life, the more you learn, of course.
Yeah.
But also, it's not to shut down or close your eyes for potential opportunities. Because when people come on your pathway and they say, oh, Bart, I have this technology, or I have this project, what do you think? Well, there are two ways to react. You can always, you can just say, yeah, I'm not interested, I'm busy with my project. Or you can start talking and learn about and as a interest. So I always had in all my life always I say, yeah, let's talk, let's learn, let's discuss, and be flexible, because there are many ways to Rome, and it's not because you have stipulated in your Excel sheet this is the way that this
Yeah,
is a good way. And I
yeah,
think there's a reason why some people come on your pathway. There's always a reason, and so be open for those signals, because these are signals. Be open, take them, and then you will see. And what I also saw, like often you don't immediately learn or understand today why you met a certain person or why you talked to a certain person. And sometimes after 1 month or half a year or 1 year later, even say, that's why I had to meet that person. That's why I talked to that person. So be open for these kind of opportunities, because coincidence doesn't exist. That I'm
all
really,
right. So this is
coincidence doesn't exist. There's always a reason why people come to you.
yeah,
Uh,
and
there's always a reason.
I would personally add, if you speak to some person, it opened up connections to others, right? If you
Exactly.
stay in your cellar, you will never experience and explore the world, right? So coming back to Toyota, because I think Toyota is very famous, at least from an outside view, for pursuing innovation over a longer term.
Yeah.
Um, how did this Toyota time shape your approach towards technical innovation?
Massively. I mean, what I learned in Toyota is, yeah, was unbelievable. I mean, yes, of course, they have their very strong engineering focus. I think Toyota is one of the companies who spent most of their profits back into research and development. And
Mhm.
so they give engineers amazing chances to grow. And so
Okay.
I was super, super happy with the opportunities that Toyota gave me at that time. I really learned so much, but also I learned so much on leadership. How do you lead a team? How do you work with people, and so on? And but also just generally as an engineer, I mean, never to give up to find the answer. I mean, for example, this the 5 why principle. It was kind of very important. I mean, you need to ask at least 5 times why before you really found the root cause of a problem, or how they analyzed problems and how they then made a methodology to come to a solution. I always said that Toyota is actually an engineering school. It's like they are making fantastic engineers, and yeah, as a result, some cars coming out of the factories, but that's only the result of actually teaching and producing great engineers. And I think this is the secret. I mean, they focus on the engineers, on the people, because that's actually your most important asset that you have. And yeah, the result are cars that coming out. And
Yeah.
it's super important. It's also a principle, like in Toyota, they in principle, they never fire anybody. You don't
Yeah.
fire
Yeah.
people. You always try to find solutions for, and they are very much solutions driven. Never giving up. Always also go and study. I mean, this was something that it was very important. Always go to the factory, go to the problem point, and study and see it with your own eyes. This and so a lot of those, let's say, principles have really shaped me a lot in my life, and yeah, also the fact that you work for the community, you work for the people. So this was also a very strong DNA in Toyota. So you always contribute to society, and it's important.
One follow-up question, because as Europeans, there is always the view that there is this long-taking consensus in Japanese companies.
Correct.
From an inside view, you might have a completely different perspective. Can you explain the role of this consensus? Why is it so powerful from Japanese point of view, and what is unique? Can you share an inside view?
So what is very unique is the way they come to indeed the decision making, and it's extremely long,
Yes.
but it's not about only the consensus making. It is also about gathering all the data, making sure that all the analyses are correct, and also the execution plan is made. So the moment that in Toyota they say, let's go, we push the green button, then they have everything done. Everything is prepared, It's like,
Okay.
then it's only like just running a script,
Yeah.
and then you run the script. And this is why Toyota, I always say Toyota takes a long time to make a decision. Once decision is made, it's like their bullet trains. It goes extremely fast because then the whole thing is written up. They know everything,
Yeah.
cost, the people. They say, I think in it has its pros and cons. I mean, I don't say which kind of let's say way of managing is the best way. I mean, Europeans has clearly a different way, which basically they take a little bit faster decisions without having everything already fixed. And that gives us a bit of a flexibility, where you see that flexibility in the Japanese culture is very hard. So because once they decided on a plan, they want to execute the plan to the letter,
Yeah.
and then when
It's very
something
impressive.
happens, and then when something happens that is actually not in the script,
Yeah.
like a sudden event, then it's like, oh, panic. What do we do? How do we solve? And this is then basically where you see then a little bit the let's say the disadvantage of such a system, because it creates let's say insecure, and people don't know what to do and so on. And so this creativity thinking is then less there. For example, if you then go into Europeans, they maybe not have everything nicely scripted. When something happens, yeah, let's solve it, no problem. We're gonna do it like that, like that, like that. You see, and that's the different culture.
Yeah.
So one made it sure,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
one like, okay, they take it on like it comes.
I think we can be very thankful to Toyota and other Asian manufacturers, because actually, in terms of fuel cell and hydrogen mobility, they are the ones who are continuing to advance. And I think they are now in the third iteration of their systems, just doing it despite all the discussions that pure battery electric vehicles will be the prevailing ones. It's very impressive. And we can be very thankful that we have these Asian companies just pushing through. Like you say, they have a script and they push the button, right?
They push the button and they follow the script. And so unless there's something that is shocking different, then they will change. So that's why, yeah, they just make the analysis on hydrogen,
Yeah.
and they believe just like me that this is one of the best solutions at the end.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so they go for it and they
Yeah.
continue to do it. And I think we should be indeed very thankful for them to do it.
Yeah. Coming to your important European role in the administration, and so I think you were instrumental on setting up these hydrogen valleys. Can you explain what was the most rewarding thing in that transformative project, and what was the most challenging aspect to get this going in 7 years' time?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were many things I did at the commission level, but Hydrogen Valleys is one of the very impactful initiatives, together also with the European Hydrogen Bank, because I was also the originator of the European Hydrogen Bank initiative. But the Hydrogen Valleys, I will tell you the story behind that.
This is why we are here, Bart.
When I arrived at the commission, as I told you, I had a very big local mandate here in my city, so I
Yes.
was very much engaged in with the local people and so on. And when I moved to the commission, I left that position because it was impossible to combine it. But what I learned there is that it is super important to get the people on board. And when I joined let's say the joint undertaking at that time, they were working with fantastic engineers, with fantastic scientists, and so on. But the people were not on board. I mean, look, 2016. This is now almost like 10 years ago, just now. If you were talking about hydrogen at that time in society,
Like an alien.
it was like nobody knew.
Mm.
I mean, when I were talking to hydrogen, I mean, people didn't know what it was. So I told to the commission, I said, look, we need to get the people on board. We really have to work with them because it's for them and they don't know. Look, I said, batteries, everybody knows. Since we are a child, basically when we had these cars that we wanted to drive, or we had some toys, or it didn't work anymore, everybody knew, oh, I need to charge my battery. Every child knows that.
Yes.
So everybody knows also what batteries are. On hydrogen, unless we have followed an engineering course or a scientific course, you have no clue what is hydrogen. So, and I said, we need to change that. We need to show to the people what hydrogen means and bring them on board. And so that's where I came up also with the Hydrogen Valley idea. But also, I said, look, all the projects that we have financed, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million. I said, in this way, we will never achieve anything. I mean, Toyota has spent billions of euros, and we are coming like with 2 million there and a research project 3 million there. And I said, that doesn't work.
It's not making an impact.
100 million. We need to start working with 100 million. And that's tickets that basically change the world, that you can have an impact. Huh? Yeah. But that was shocking. I can tell you, I will never forget the first governing board, where basically the industry, the research, and the commission was there. And I said, look, we need to do hydrogen valleys. And I don't want to talk anymore about 5 million projects. We need to go for a 100 million project. And then we need to make sure that also the society is also be part of that through, of course, local government, national government, European government, and they all contribute to the project. And then we have contribution from the private side. And it was silent. Nobody believed in it. It was like and nobody believed in it.
And what did you do then?
Even the industry didn't believe it. The researchers also, and the commission said, no, this is not possible. The answer was, the market is not ready for this. That's what they said. I was all alone. I will never forget.
You were already in your role as an executive director, so you had a mandate for this.
Yeah, well, I had a mandate to run the program,
Okay.
And then you have you can fill in different ways.
Right.
But I was like, the way we are doing it, I mean, if we continue to do it like that, we will never achieve our goals, Because the goal is to make sure that people are using this technology. That's the goal, Otherwise, if they don't buy the technology, nobody. We might have a beautiful technology somewhere in a cupboard and somewhere nice publications, and a lot of universities have written fantastic papers, but nobody is using it. What's the point, So we need to make sure that people are using it, and the only way that people can use it is that they can experience, because then they get convinced. Seeing is believing. This was the way I looked at this. And so I said, we need to involve local politicians. Really, we have to. And so the way then, because they said, look, we don't believe that the industry is ready. We don't believe that the market is ready. Nobody believed it. I mean, I will never forget that this was after 6 months I was in the commission. So I said, oh my God. Here we have a lot of work to do. So, and then the way to actually do it was actually, I went to local governments. I made calls to regions and said, are you interested to do this? And are you interested also to put money on the table? Again, can we go for a 100 million euro project? And so then I got...
And how did they react?
No, very positively.
Okay, that was the complete opposite side.
Complete opposite side. So my governing board, and then what the feedback from the market was absolute opposite. And this was the interesting point, Mm-hmm. Sometimes they say people are in a bubble, and it's really true, because they were in the bubble. Because you see really that the market, the field was thinking differently about that. Because look, and that's what I learned. I mean, I was a vice mayor of the town, right. And so what do you want to do as a mayor or vice mayor, or doesn't matter, or a governor, or whatever you are? You are very close to citizens, extremely close, because when you go out of your door of your you meet them, and the people ask questions, So if you're in Brussels, you don't meet them. I mean, honestly, you only meet people who wants to lobby, who have an interest to meet you, who wants to change the law, whatever. And
it's quite artificial. It's quite artificial.
That's why they say you are in this kind of bubble, because they like to work always with associations and representatives and whatever. But when you really go out as a mayor, you really meet people on the street, and you need to give an answer to those people. And at that time, let's go back to 2016, because today we are in a different environment. But at that time, climate was an issue. I mean, you started to become this. I mean, the students went on the street. There
Yeah,
was
yeah,
Climate for
exactly.
Fridays. Or Fridays for Climate. All these things started to happen. It was still very early time, but you knew that basically people were worried about the climate. So governors or mayors needed to bring solutions. And then you had suddenly somebody
You had
like
an idea. Yeah.
taking, why don't you join? And they said, wonderful, because now I can say something to my citizens that I do something for them, that I want to do a project with them. And that was actually why a lot of them joined. And then when I went back to my governing board, I said, look, there are here at least 6, 7 regions that would like to apply for that. So, and then they were all surprised. And then what I did is on the top of it, I said, okay, well, let's sign a kind of a letter of intent MOU with the regions that would like to participate. And then I wrote to all the regions, because I engaged also, there is a kind of committee of the regions in the European Union, and where basically all the regions come together. I wrote to all the regions and said, do you want to join this program? And I got 25 regions coming back and say, yeah, I want to sign the MOU. And that was for me personally, a very emotional moment, because I organized then a signing session inside the commission. And then you have to see like a row of regions coming from all over Europe, all different languages, all different cultures, but coming to sign the MOU with me. And
And did you have the people who you were initially addressing your address in that room, seeing the
yes,
people
of course.
committed, right? Of course. So it was also an experience for them, right?
Yes, it was an experience, and nobody could believe that suddenly so many regions were interesting. And so yeah, it was really emotional, because it was
I
like
could believe that.
I saw Europe in action. Really, this was what happened
Yeah.
there. Was like, okay, here bringing together all those people from all the corners of Europe, really willing together to work on hydrogen. And that was like a starting point. And I said, that's a momentum.
Yeah.
This will get traction. This will work. And that was beautiful. And then when we made the first call, the official Hydrogen Valley call, I think it was 2018 then, where we had the first one. And then we had immediately 6 proposals. Six
Great,
really good proposals, willing to spend up to 100 million euro. And it was very good, competition. And then we had basically Groningen, the North Netherlands, which was then the first European Hydrogen Valley awarded. And they are doing a fantastic job.
They are very bold. I know this. Yes.
Yeah, and then we had also the UK with then we had then the Orkney Islands, and I will never. I mean, 2 years later, I think I gave them an award, and we organized these awards for let's say for the good projects and so on. We had these different awards, but I gave one award to the people of Orkney.
To the people of
The Orkney Islands, because
Okay.
I found it very important, because they wanted to embrace. There was actually, before we had actually the Groningen and the Hydrogen Valley, they were already like the first ones who built on that idea. And basically we had schools, the local government had cars, and so they started to build a local ecosystem around hydrogen. And that's where I said, look, for me, these were really the people that, the Orkney people, the society that really kind of, started this thing, and then, that was important, because again, same principle, you need to bring the people on board. It's so important.
So, bottom line, the most rewarding thing was this moment of interest, but it was also challenging to convince the ones who would give you. So this is great. But this was a little bit
because on the Hydrogen Valleys there was another very important moment that happened.
Yes, please.
And this was the one that we had the Repower EU with the energy crisis. Because I said, okay, I believe that Hydrogen Valleys are a solution for, let's say, for the energy crisis and how we can accelerate the transition. because we had a few hydrogen valleys, but we didn't have a lot of budget for that. That's where I went to the commissioner and I said, look, commissioner, I believe now it's the right timing to accelerate hydrogen valleys. And then I worked to get the 200 million euro extra from the budget for the Repower EU. And I wrote a whole by myself. I was on a night. I was writing the entire night. I think I sent it very late in the night to the commissioner and the cabinets and so on. I said, look, this is what we need to do. And then the next day she said, I like it. And it was done. And that's how then basically I got 200 million euro extra for hydrogen valleys. But again, everybody was not, I mean, I was the only one who took that decision and fight for it.
So I think this is real leadership behavior, because you needed to convince people who were not convinced. You needed to inspire them. But it also took a lot of personal engagement, and not everybody is willing to do that. But the good lessons for our little podcast here is, if you do it like Bart, you have a chance to inspire people and basically create a real movement in Europe, right?
Yeah.
And this is personal engagement. Your night shift, it's great. So one little question to not only talk about the past, because I have seen, let's say, Ursula von der Leyen announcing this clean industrial deal, and I think from 2016, where we then later had Greta movement, some people are now seeing a flip back to fossil. Do you think that this clean energy industrial deal is able to accelerate what you started, or do we have to reactivate? What is your view?
I believe that the clean industrial deal is an opportunity as well for the hydrogen sector as a whole, because we talk about, green steel. We talk about the electrolyzers we want to sell. We talk about, let's say, the refineries that need. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity in the green industrial deal for hydrogen, but it will not come like a red carpet. It means that we will have to work hard on it. And we
Who
need
is
to,
we? Who is we?
I mean, we as I think as citizens, I mean, as everybody will have to work hard on it, because nobody can do this alone. Will be strong partnerships will be necessary, and really people who work, not only talking.
So we need a lot of people engaging in the
Yes.
hydrogen economy to push this forward.
Yes,
But we now have an opportunity.
we have an opportunity. The opportunity was always there, Bjorn. I mean, the opportunity never. I mean, I can tell you, the support at the European Commission for hydrogen is huge, is enormous, and this is good. But I think it's now the industry and the researchers that need to deliver. And I think this is the point, and this is also why I started Green Energy Park, my current job. But we can come to that.
Yeah, we will come to that, definitely, yes. Okay, great. So in order to, let's say, also respond to questions that we have received prior to the recording, I have two questions here from Thomas. And just to, I think we covered a little bit of that, but he asked, what are the key factors that are needed in scaling up and replacing fossil fuel? And what is your time frame? How long will it take?
So, first of all, what are the key factors? It's very simple. We need to make sure that hydrogen is competitive with today's gray hydrogen. Yes, you can have a little bit more expensive, but very slightly. But in principle, it needs to compete with the gray hydrogen. If we cannot get there, hydrogen will not be successful.
Yeah,
and that's why we need to go to look where we can get all the natural conditions right to produce hydrogen in a competitive way with fossil fuel hydrogen. And one of the key elements is cheap renewables, cheap energy. This is very important. If you do not have cheap energy, it will never work. And we should not forget that electricity cost counts for 65% of your hydrogen molecule cost.
Yeah.
So if you start high, you will end up high. I mean, it's as
Yeah.
simple as that.
But
So,
this is throughout Europe, right? We have a problem throughout Europe in that sense.
and that's why the hydrogen economy in Europe is not easy. It's really not easy because we are suffering high electricity prices. Yes, there is always some opportunities here and there, but it's all niche. And all the rest, I mean, and that's why you see a lot of projects starting or looking, but they are all heavily subsidized, you know, very heavily subsidized, which is okay to start, which was always also important. But at the end, it needs to be a viable economical case. And
Is building on that and comparing it to the Middle East and China. So what you're saying is we have this inherent negative point of high energy. Is it different in the Middle East and in China? What are they doing different?
so I think it's not very different with the Middle East because I calculated and I made a lot of calculations for the Middle East as well.
Okay.
Because I was thinking also to do some project over there, but at the moment it is still more expensive. So their
Okay.
electricity cost is also too expensive still. So unless you have somebody who is financing it and subsidizing it, I mean, we all know and that there's a lot of, I'd say, I mean, some sheikhs are really putting a lot of money on that, and we should be also thankful to them. And
Yeah.
also, I mean, because also they help to advance the hydrogen sector. But the
Yeah.
bottom line is still electricity cost is very high, even in the Middle East.
Oh,
And
really?
so, yeah, and
Yeah.
also the water cost is very high. Okay, not water is not now the main financial or cost issue in hydrogen, but it's still more expensive. So China, when you look at China, China has a lot of opportunities, but the point is that they need so much energy, and the renewable energy that that they produce at the moment, they should use directly. So they're going to use a little bit for hydrogen production, but if they need to produce all the hydrogen that they need to build massively still a lot of windmills and solar panels. And I don't think they will have enough renewables for all of that. So
Okay.
my study is that also a lot of China will also need import of hydrogen to do.
And where is it coming from? So if you rule out Middle East and China,
I think it's very simple. I mean, I think the Latin America,
okay.
Africa has opportunities there.
Hmm.
I mean, look, what I said always to the Middle East, I said, look, you can produce your hydrogen for your own consumption. Use it by yourself, create added value products,
Hmm.
and then sell those added value products. But I think being a hydrogen producer and exporter to Europe will be very hard for them. It's very
Oh,
expensive.
really?
It's very
So
expensive.
and in Latin America, they have more water power. Is that correct?
They have water power. They have very cheap renewables. Like for example, where I'm now in, it's not only Brazil but also other Uruguay, Colombia. They have quite good renewables. I mean, for example, even where I am, they have now there are now 300 gigawatts of renewable projects waiting to be connected. They are waiting for off-takers. So, so there is the grid is 100% green almost. I mean, 98.5%
Yeah, it's
green.
crazy.
So they are just waiting for big projects like us to come over and just take off because that's how then they can build their renewable projects. So it is really, let's say, beautiful how to see how Latin America they invested a lot in these renewables over the past decades, and now they are benefiting from that because they have very cheap electricity and they have so much electricity abundant that they can also produce the hydrogen. Yes, there
Yeah,
are
and they have also through hydrogen a real opportunity for their society to grow
challenges.
and to become an energy powerhouse of
Yeah.
the world, if that is correct. So moving on to your now green energy park endeavor, I think you touched a little bit that you started this because your 7 years were over in the administration. But what got you inspired to start exactly Green Energy Park?
because it was time for the industry to show that it's possible, the hydrogen economy.
Yeah.
I looked. Looking back on my career, I started with Toyota, the engineering path, and at that time, 1999, when I started, the technology needed to improve. So throughout Toyota, we launched the first Mirai and the first hydrogen refuel. So the technology was gradually getting better. What was missing in 2016 was really the policies, the regulations. There was nothing.
So you do tick that off as well.
Then I went to the commission and helped to bring hydrogen at the highest level. So I was extremely, and I can tell you the first meetings, when we had the first yearly, conference on hydrogen and the joint undertaking, it was impossible to get even a director general or to get even a commissioner coming to that event. It was not important. It was like, okay, something, in best case, we got a director or something like that. So, I kept pushing. Suddenly we got a commissioner. And I have to say it was Commissioner Sefcovic, was the first commissioner that came and went to speak about hydrogen. And then we went up. We had the vice president, and then we had finally the president,
Yes.
Ursula von der Leyen in 22. But it took almost like 6 years to get basically
the attention of these people.
And really the attention and working on it. But at a certain point, then you had all the RED III regulations coming over. You had so much regulations coming that you say, okay, now the politicians, they know about hydrogen, regulations are starting to be in place. So I said, okay, the technology is there now, we have the regulations in place. What is the logical next step is that the industry needs to show that it can happen. And that's why I started. And I saw a lot of, industries talking about it, but not really pushing through, not going all the way unless there was somebody coming with a lot of money to support it. And I said, look, this doesn't work like that. We need to do something where we can show that hydrogen can be economically viable. We need to find out. And that's where after I left the commission, I traveled the world. I went to US, I went to Latin America, obviously, but I also went to India. I talked to a lot of African countries as well, and I tried to, and also to the Middle East. I was a couple of times there. I think it was 5 times even in the Middle East in that period. And I tried to talk with all the developers and try to understand, the ecosystem, and try to find one of the best places in the world to produce it economically viable. And this is how I ended up in Brazil. And actually, that finding was actually supported, for example, with Bloomberg. If you look today at Bloomberg New Energy Features analysis, you see that Brazil is the cheapest place to produce it. LCOH is the best in Brazil. Then when you look also Fraunhofer Institute analysis, you see also Latin America and also Brazil, one of the best places in the world. And so the analysis that I made, and then afterwards also confirmed by various of those studies, made me say, okay, that's where we need to start. Does it mean it's impossible on the other locations? No. Look, hydrogen you can produce even on Antarctica. You can produce everywhere hydrogen.
Yes.
It's the most simple thing that you can do. The point
is we need a viable point that spreads out.
Exactly. And that's where I said, okay, we need to start in Latin America, because there's a lot of renewable electricity abundant, and there's a lot of water there as well. And so these two elements are the basis for hydrogen. And so you need to look for that. You need to start, your starting point needs to be right. And that's where I said, okay, now we're going to show how to make it viable, because that's the only way how you can convince the skeptical people on basically the contrary, that hydrogen is a part of the solution. And so that's where then I looked at the people to work with me. You cannot do this alone.
No, for sure. And coming back to your endeavor, I think the Green Energy Park is much more than a bunch of advisors, right? You have basically a big concept behind that, right?
Correct. Now, the Green Energy Park is a group of companies. So we came together with a number of companies, basically working in the LNG market, ammonia market. They have more than 40 years experience in onshore and offshore pipelines, in terminals building, ammonia tanks building. I mean, one of the biggest ammonia tank on the European soil is actually built with one of the group companies as well on the European. So they have about, I think, altogether between 800 to 900 people, all the group companies.
Quite an army.
Yeah, quite an army, and you need an army to do this. I mean, we have process engineers, tank engineers, piping engineers, electromechanical engineers. We also have a lot of EPC, which is engineering, procurement, and construction people. They are based in Lithuania. We have also steel construction people who make unique pieces already today. And with all those people together, basically we are designing and then going to build and operate actually the hydrogen, ammonia, the production plants in Brazil. But you need that. I mean, no, so we are not advisors at all. Basically, we use all our experience. And I looked actually for people who were complementary to me. If you look at the executive board of Green Energy Park, all those people coming from a different background. I mean, we have Tobias, he's coming from Germany, from German engineering, leading a big engineering firm. Then we have Mindaugas, he has constructed in the hardest parts of Europe, in the Baltics and the North part where it's cold and so on. He constructed undersea pipelines, metering stations, hard stuff to build, very difficult. And for them, I mean, their spirit in their company is amazing. They say, when everybody gives up, that's where we start to work. So, and this is the spirit that I look, because building this hydrogen plant is not something that is a walk in the park. It will ask determination. You cannot give up. You always have to fight. Every day when you wake up is a fight, every single day. And so those people have fought their entire life. They have not done, and so you work with people that they know this thing. You know, for them it's their natural habitat. And then finally, I needed somebody who knows about financing, and so I found somebody who worked in New York and in Wall Street with Morgan Stanley. Then he spent 20 years of his life in London, in the city of London. He has seen everything in the world of financing. And initially, I said, look, I really need you, Mario. I said, I need you to join me because we are all engineers and we don't know so much about financing. And we need a lot of money and a lot of financing. And so the guy said, okay, because I joined with you, Bart, but only 2 days in a week. At the end, he's so inspired, he works 7 days in a week. And not only 8 hours per day, but almost 16 hours per day. And this is the people that you need. So we are strictly, let's say, complementary from the engineering, construction, financing, and I'm the researcher and the policy maker. And together, we're going to build this world-changing project in Brazil.
Coming to your specific approach, because I think you are not offering, if I read it correctly, project management, but you're trying to deliver the vertical supply chain that is needed. Can you explain because we have a lot of project managers listening and they also want to run successful hydrogen projects. So please explain what is unique about your approach, how are the different roles, and what are the different risks that you need to cover when starting such a project?
So now there's many questions in one question.
Sorry for that.
No, but the point is that we decided to be vertically integrated. And why is that? The reason is very simple. If you look today to oil and gas industry, and you look at the entire value chain, for every step in the chain, there is already companies matured, well established. They know what they do and they know the best. You know, so there's no need in oil and gas that you have the entire value chain, that you cover it. In the hydrogen world, doesn't exist. All the steps in between, every company is a new company. It's not yet matured. It's still trying to figure out how to do it, how to make the business. Often there's no regulation yet in place. So when I was talking to CEOs of companies, even when I was at the commission, and you say, look, will you move to hydrogen? Do you want to buy the hydrogen? They said, yeah, I'm interested, but I don't know how to start. I don't know where to begin. Um, Look, today, if you build a factory in Europe, you need electricity. You pick up your phone, you call to the electricity company, can you connect me? And maybe 2 weeks later, you're connected. Oh, I
Yes.
want natural gas. I pick up my phone, you call the natural gas operator. Can you connect me to the grid? Yeah, we will pull up to, maybe it takes a month, but you are connected. But at the rest, they just open the valve, they open, and it's done. You know, you get an invoice every month nicely. It's delivered continuously. It flows. And this is so they don't even need to worry about energy. Actually, yeah, the cost is
It's a commodity, right? It's there.
it's there. The infrastructure is there. Everything is beautifully arranged. Then, do you want hydrogen? Yeah, who can deliver me hydrogen? First question. Who shall I call? Where?
Yeah.
I mean, I can pick up the phone, but I don't know the telephone number. That's number one. Huh?
Yeah.
So, number two, okay, I found somebody who produces hydrogen. But yeah, I need to pick it up in the port or I need to pick it up in the country where they produce. Oh, who can I call for logistics? I don't know. There's nobody in the telephone book, you know? So what I want to say is that the entire value chain today does not exist. Yes, there are many, many players that are doing something, trying to make it work, but they are not aligned. They are not. And the point is that for me, that was the moment I said, look, we need to be involved from the beginning, the production, until the delivery at the gate. And we need to come up with solutions so that when I go to the CEO and I have to say, yeah, you can buy hydrogen with me, and don't worry, I will bring it on the gate at this price and this quantities that you need at the time that you need it. Because these are the concerns. It's not about the price. The price is not the first concern. The first concern is, can I get the energy that I need in the quantities that I need and at the location that I want? That's number one. Then number two is, yes, the price, of course. It's an important one, but it's first about, can I get it in the quantities and location? And then that's where I said, okay, we need to bring up the entire value chain, and then we want to work with partners. We're going to work with partners who have the same mentality, because today it's not about making huge profits. Today it's about making it possible to happen, this hydrogen economy. Because if you start to work, and this is something that I also learned in the hydrogen valleys, because you have people need to work together, and all these players need to work together, and one after the other follows, and so on. The point is that if there's one person who is very greedy, who wants to make a lot of money, your chain is broken. Okay. Second point, risk taking, and that's the biggest issue, the risk taking, because nobody as a company likes to take a lot of risk. So you
Yes.
prefer to shift the risk or to the one in front of you,
Yes.
who is before you, or the one after you, but not me.
But how do you manage this now?
Because you bring them together and you say everybody is part of the story. You want to be part of the story? You want to bring the hydrogen? Yes? Well, that's the conditions. So basically, you try to find people that have the same mentality. This is very important. If there are people who want to make money, lots of money today, stop it. And I did already. I kicked out already a few of them that I said, no, you're not the right partner with the right mentality. Yes, there will be a future where there will be a lot of competition where you can make money, but that future is not today. Today, we need to work on making sure that there will be a future, that we will get there. But if you already think you're there, you're wrong. And so
My
you really have to work with that, and you need to carefully, and this is really an advice that I give to all the managers here, carefully select the partner, the people, the companies you work with. It's the mindset that makes it happen.
it's more being on the mission than making big bucks.
Yes, yes. And if money is the main driver, drop them. It's not yet the time.
I'm so impressed about the approach, and I can fully buy into this. But there is one big question mark I have, because this financing industry does not work this way. I sense that there is not the sense of risk taking. They have their models, and if the models they not work, you're not offering financing products. So how do you overcome this hurdle to get these projects financed?
Well, there are, and then coming back to what I said first, is to find the right location where all the
Mhm.
natural elements are available. So in our model, we are showing that it is financially economical viable. And then
That's
they
the first point. Okay.
that's a because a lot of those projects aren't. I mean, I
Mhm.
said that a lot of, and I'm also a kind of a root cause for that because when I was at the commission, we financed a lot of projects, you know. But in a
Yeah.
way, subsidies is also kind of a market disturber because you attract certain projects to a certain location because there is money and developers are going there. And actually, this is dangerous because then when the money is run out, still the natural conditions are not there, and then
Yeah.
basically it doesn't work anymore. And this is what we see happening now, that a lot of projects are just stopped because of that. Actually, it doesn't make economical sense. The only reason why they went there is because there were subsidies. But that's how you do market disturbance. And so, and I know that also with the Hydrogen Valley, somehow we need to be very careful to make sure that we create I'd say that we create valid,
Viable systems.
viable system, and it's that was a learning for me also during my progress process. And but so this is where you approach the financial, I mean, sector. You have to basically go there and say, look, this is the economical case. Yes, maybe we will not make 20%, 25%, double, triple digits profit like you have with the IT sector, because this is infrastructure energy sector. It's a long-term investment. And I think when I often say, also when I go in public speeches, I often say that the whole finance world, they have been living on steroids the
Yeah.
last years because the IT bubble, the apps and all this, I mean, online platforms and everything, they were really giving so much profits, but that was not, I'd say, that was kind of living in a bubble as well. Because when you look back in the years 80s or 90s, at that time there was no IT sector yet, and there they had to invest in infrastructure projects and so on, where the returns were more moderate. But they
Mhm.
got used at such a huge returns from the IT sector, a short
Okay.
term, huge returns, that they got kind of a, let's say, maybe a misperception of what is actually real. Yes, it was also real, but somehow you cannot compare energy projects to
And
that.
are you seeing that managers in the finance industry adapt to this new world?
Mm, uh,
Because with all the AI hype, I think that's
yeah, correct.
not
It would be
slowing down your argument.
correct. No, you're absolutely right. That's why I said also to the commission, I said, look, what would be important is that we make some rules on finance. That some part of the profits that are generated should go to green to clean tech.
Hmm.
Uh, so, and I think we are not there yet. So, I think that some of the investments that we will need to make some regulation that investments are channeled to clean tech, because clean tech is not an easy one, you know. Doesn't matter now hydrogen, but also other clean tech. In general, clean tech is not an easy one to invest. It's a long-term investment. It's, yes, it's more higher risk than, for example, AI today, for sure, no doubt.
Yeah.
So if I believe if there is no regulation around that, it will be very hard to raise all the money that we will need in the world to realize our climate ambitions. Because now with AI, I mean, look, I was going to give you an example, and you will immediately understand. The example is very simple. If you have a lot of cheap energy available, and then you're an investor, and there are two projects. One is a
Hmm.
hydrogen project, which costs 4 billion euro, and the other
Yeah.
one is a data center, which costs also 4 billion euro. But a
Exactly.
data center you can build in 1 year and a half. A hydrogen, you need 3 years of construction time for the same
Yes.
project, same investment. And with the return, you are sure that with the AI, you have an immediately return. For the hydrogen and the ammonia, you still need to convince the off takers. It's a much harder market. AI is an easy market. Where do you put your 1 billion euro?
Yeah, for sure.
Voila, you have it. So you know the answer, and that's the reality where we are living today in the market. This is I see every day, and so the point is that if we do not regulate that somehow, that also clean tech should get part of the investments, then it will
So
be.
there are some initiatives where banks, I think in the UK, for example, have to get out of oil and gas investments. Otherwise, they have to re-explain. So what you're saying is there should be some sort of quota investments of the financial institutes that are going into clean tech projects. That's what you're recommending.
Exactly. I think it's very,
And
very important.
with then the obligation to explain if you're not doing that, or with the obligation that you then have disadvantages on the rating.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, there must be consequences if you don't do
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, if there's no consequence, I mean, there
Yeah.
must be a stick.
Yeah. Okay, so this has been great. So what I realized is basically you're not driven by the money only. In particular, you're on the mission. You had this engineering role, you had this administrative role, and now you want to show that it is possible. So
Yes.
I congratulate you on this approach. Coming back, and I have, let's say, 3 more questions for you, which I think are very important also to our listeners. So please put yourself into the shoes of a young project manager who got excited, also because of Bart's word, to join the hydrogen economy. Unfortunately, he's in Asia or in Europe and not in Brazil, but he still wants to be successful in his role as a project manager. What would you recommend to that young professional, what he should look out for his project?
Well, first of all, before you look out for your project, is what do you want to achieve in life? What is your life's mission? What do you really want to do? And think about this carefully, because this is actually what will make your project successful.
Okay.
Because if it's not in your heart, you will never achieve it, or it will be very hard. You have to live, you have to breathe, you have to live what you want to achieve in life. So you need to have your life's goal. Think about it carefully. You have to, I mean, I really believe you have to have your goal ready, and then I go for it, you know. And there are many ways again to get to your goal. Your one project can be a part of the way, but there will be many projects in your career coming up. So and each of those projects will bring you closer to your goal. But
do it with passion.
But do it with passion, and you have to really. And if you do not have the passion, and whatever you do, and if you do a project and you don't feel it, I'm not sure it's the right project for you. There are maybe other projects for you that are even better. So this is number one priority. Think about it. And then when you believe, okay, this is my goal, I want to achieve that, and I start my project, never give up. Never give up. This is, I mean, if you have that goal, you want to achieve the goal, you never give up, because the people see that around you. People look at it and they say, this guy, no, he will not do it. And yeah, he wants to do it because he has to do it. He gets his salary, whatever, you know. But it's not really with his heart. So never give up. Fight for it. Fight for your project. I mean, I can tell you many stories in my life how I fought, and you would be even very. I think we need to do another podcast.
We need to do another one in 2 years' time or 1 year,
because that's how you show to the people outside that you are determined, that you want to make it happen, and then they start to believe you. And that's very important. Then surround you with the right people, with like-minded people, because alone you cannot change things. As a team, with partners, you can do amazing things. You can beat the world. That's how often I say. But make sure that you have the people with the same passion around you, and then you wouldn't say 1 + 1 in that case is much more than 3. So do that. This is very important as well. And enjoy it. Enjoy what you're doing, and be positive.
Enjoy the challenge also.
Enjoy,
right?
and make fun. I mean, and every step that you make, if it's a small step, celebrate the step. Go for it in the evening. Let's have a drink together and let's celebrate as a team. Because even if it's a small step, even if it's a submission of some file, or even if it's something that you found like a breakthrough, celebrate, celebrate. That's most important. And celebrate it as a team and stay always positive. Don't talk negative because it brings you nowhere. Only negative brings down your own energy. That's the only thing that it does, and the people around you, because people think, eh, that's a negative guy. I don't want to be with him. So that's important. Stay positive. Enjoy what you do. Celebrate if you have successes. Or surround you with the right people. Very important. And never give up. Fight for what you believe is the right thing to do.
I think this can apply to any role that you have in a profession, not only to project managers. So this is great advice. So I want to reduce my remaining questions to just one, because I think it's so inspirational that I don't want to mess up here. But please put yourself into the shoes 10 years forward, Bart, and you would like to look back on your career, and what do you think is your view on what would you like to achieve, and how do the people should see you in 10 years time?
Oh,
Will
well,
you be the Elon Musk of hydrogen?
well, I mean, look, my life was about, I mean, coming back to what I said, I wanted to work for the climate and I wanted to make a difference and an impact. So I wanted to make sure that at the end of my life, or 10 years later when I go on retirement, that I can look back and I said, yeah, I made a difference. I made a difference in the people's life in a positive way. And that was what the other people think. Honestly, I don't care too much because they can think whatever they want. I hope, of course, that they will see it as well. Of course, that's the aim. But it's not about what the other people think. It's about how you feel about yourself. If you feel like, okay, I did the right thing, I'm happy, and you can tell this to your children, your grandchildren, say, look, this is what we achieved, and I lived for it. And that's the most important. It's about yourself and your family, how they feel about it. Because don't forget that also your family, they sacrifice a lot. I mean, if I look to my family, I'm off, I'm gone a lot, I'm working late hours. So they need to be part of the story. So that's the most important. And so my aim is that we achieve the hydrogen economy. This is really what I would love to do. And I believe in 10 years from now, if I can see that the hydrogen economy is really taking off, and I see a lot of successful projects that really can, and the hydrogen is really used in many, many sectors, then I will say mission completed.
Wow. Okay. So for sure, I think you already made an impact in your past career, and seeing how driven you are, I can see that you will make a good impact in the next 10 years. So thank you very much, dear Bart. It was mind-blowing for me to listen to all the passion that you have. We at Highfinder are also passionate, slightly in a different, but we also engage to grow the hydrogen economy with passion, with our tool set, right? And seeing people like you doing this on the project level is also very inspiring to me, and giving me comfort that I'm in the right place to continue working for the next 10 years or so, right? So thank you very much for being part of this, and I'm sure we will have a follow-up, and I hope the next time we can do it also here in the studio or so. But thank you very much, Bart.
Now, thank you, Bjorn, and thank you to Highfinder for the opportunity to share the story and to inspire young engineers, young project managers to do the right thing in life. And also, I think that you with Highfinder, you play a very important role in moving this ecosystem to the right direction. Thanks a lot for your
Thank you
passion.
very much. So thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.